Girl dies from cancer. 3 days later, mom opens her school bag and bursts into tears. The house sat quiet, almost too quiet, on a cool autumn afternoon. Golden leaves drifted down from the trees, piling up against the windows. Inside, Sarah stood by the kitchen window, staring out at the empty backyard. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she remembered her daughter Emma playing there, her laughter echoing through the house. But that was before everything changed, before the hospital visits and the long nights filled with worry, before the cancer took away her little girl. Sarah's eyes shifted to the hallway, where Emma's backpack still hung on its usual hook. For 3 days, it had sat untouched. She couldn't bring herself to look inside, afraid of what memories it might hold. Today, though, something drew her to it, an ache in her chest that she couldn't ignore. She took a deep breath and walked toward the bag, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. The air felt heavy around her as she unhooked the bag from its place. She ran her fingers over the worn fabric, imagining Emma's small hands gripping it on her way to school. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the wave of sorrow that washed over her. But she couldn't hold back the tears that slipped down her cheeks. With a shaky breath, she carried the bag to the dining room table and set it down gently, as if it might break. Her hands trembling as she reached for the zipper, pausing for a moment. She wasn't ready, but maybe she never would be. Slowly, she pulled the zipper open, and the sound filled the quiet room. Inside, the familiar smell of crayons and childhood drifted out, bringing a bittersweet smile to her face. She pulled out a stack of notebooks, a handful of pens, and a few stray candy wrappers. Each item felt like a piece of Emma, frozen in time. She held up a notebook with a doodle-covered cover, tracing the lines with her fingers. Sarah's heart clenched as she remembered Emma's excitement over school projects, how she would come home full of stories, eager to share every detail. As Sarah dug deeper into the bag, she felt the weight of her grief pressing down on her, but she knew she had to keep going. It felt like a final connection to her daughter, a way to hold on just a little longer to the girl she had lost too soon. Welcome back to Plot Twister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. Sarah carefully sifted through the contents of the school bag, her fingers brushing against the edges of Emma's notebooks. Each one was filled with doodles and scribbles, little notes that Emma had written to herself during class. Sarah found a page where Emma had drawn a picture of their family, a simple sketch with big smiles and bright sun above. She couldn't stop the tears that welled up in her eyes as she traced the drawing, remembering how much joy Emma had always carried with her, even when times got hard. A crumpled piece of paper caught Sarah's attention. She smoothed it out and found one of Emma's old spelling tests, marked with a bright red A+ in the corner. Sarah smiled through her tears, hearing Emma's voice in her mind, proudly announcing how she had aced the test. Emma had always loved school, always eager to learn something new. But that enthusiasm faded as the hospital visits grew more frequent, and the days at school became fewer and farther between. Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the last day she had dropped Emma off at school, not knowing it would be her final time. She remembered watching her daughter walk through the doors, her backpack bouncing with each step. Emma had waved one last time before disappearing inside. It felt like a lifetime ago, yet the memory was still so vivid, so raw. Sarah had known then how quickly everything would change. She reached deeper into the bag and found a half-eaten candy bar, a small remnant of Emma's playful side. She smiled, thinking of how Emma would sneak little treats into her bag, always trying to hide them from her. Sarah remembered how, even when she was sick, Emma would try to cheer everyone up, making jokes and trying to lighten the mood, as if she didn't want anyone to worry about her. As she sat there surrounded by the small, ordinary objects of her daughter's life, Sarah felt the weight of the silence around her. It was the absence of Emma's voice, her laughter, her energy that hurt the most. She reached into that side pocket of the bag and pulled out a folded note she hadn't noticed before. Her hands trembled as she turned it over, her heart racing with a sudden rush of emotions she couldn't quite place. She hesitated, the paper fragile between her fingers, a small part of her not yet ready to see what it might hold. Sarah sat at the table staring at the folded note she'd found. Her hands shook, and she could hear her own breathing, shallow, uneven. The note felt heavy, far heavier than its size suggested. Her mind raced, wondering what Emma might have written, what final words she might have left behind. She blinked away the tears blurring her vision, gripping the edge of the table for support. She unfolded the paper, feeling a knot tighten in her chest. She read the simple message scrawled in her daughter's familiar looping handwriting. Emma's words spoke directly to her heart, leaving her breathless. Her hand flew to her mouth as she struggled to contain the flood of emotions. The note was short, but it spoke volumes, words filled with a depth that seemed beyond Emma's young years. It was also almost as if Emma had known how much Sarah would need these words in this exact moment. She pressed the note against her chest, feeling a mix of pain and warmth spread through her. It was as if she could feel Emma's presence in the room. Her spirit lingered in the space between words. Sarah's tears came freely now, falling onto the paper as she tried to steady herself. Her heart felt as if it might burst with the weight of everything she'd kept locked inside since that day. Still clutching the note, Sarah glanced back at the bag. Her eyes fell on a hidden zipper she had never noticed before, tucked away beneath a flap of fabric. She reached for it, her fingers fumbling as she pulled it open. Her breath caught as she reached inside and felt the edges of something solid and smooth, a small decorated diary. She pulled the diary out, turning it over in her hands. The cover was decorated with colorful stickers and little sketches, the kind Emma used to love making. Sarah ran her fingers over the cover, feeling the raised edges of each sticker. She opened the first page, her breath catching in her throat as she saw Emma's handwriting again, this time in a long entry dated just a few weeks before her passing. The room seemed to close in around her as she read the first few lines. She could almost hear Emma's voice, playful and sweet, as she wrote about everyday things, school, her favorite shows, the people she loved, but then the tone shifted, and Sarah felt her heart tighten. Emma's words hinted at something deeper, something more intentional than just the ramblings of a 12-year-old girl. It was as if there was a hidden message waiting to be found within those pages. Sarah turned each page of the little diary, her fingers trembling as she read. Emma's handwriting was a mix of neat lines and hurried scribbles, as if she had so much to say, but not enough time to say it all. At first, the entries seemed like a child's thoughts, descriptions of her favorite songs, funny moments with friends, little notes about her family, but then Sarah came across a passage that made her pause, the words hitting her like a wave. Emma had written about how she sometimes stayed awake at night, thinking about what would happen when she wasn't around anymore. She didn't seem afraid. Instead, her words carried a quiet determination. Sarah's heart ached as she read, imagining her daughter lying in bed, writing these thoughts when she should have been dreaming of a future. But Emma's thoughts weren't filled with fear. They were filled with love, an unselfish, unending love for her family. Turning the page, Sarah found an entry where Emma described a secret project she had been working on. She wrote about wanting to leave behind a little surprise that would make her family smile, even when she couldn't be there anymore. Emma wrote how she didn't want them to think of her with sadness every time they missed her. Instead, she wanted to remind them of the good times, the laughter, and the love that they shared. Sarah's eyes blurred with tears as she continued to read. Emma had planned out everything with a childlike optimism, imagining how each family member would find their special note and how it might bring them some comfort. There were instructions too, directions to find where she had hidden her final gifts. Emma's words were simple, but the thoughtfulness behind them was profound. Sarah could barely comprehend how much effort her young daughter had put into making sure her family would feel her presence even after she was gone. In the back of the diary, tucked between the last few pages, Sarah found a small bundle of envelopes tied with a purple ribbon. Each one was labeled with the name Sarah, her husband, their son, written in Emma's unmistakable handwriting. Her breath caught as she held the envelope with her own name, the paper cool against her skin. It was almost too much to bear, yet she couldn't stop herself from carefully untying the ribbon, knowing that whatever Emma had written inside was meant just for her. As she opened the letter, she felt a rush of love so intense it nearly overwhelmed her. Emma's voice filled her mind once more, and Sarah felt like, for a moment, she had her daughter back. Sarah held the letter close, her hands trembling as she unfolded the paper. Emma's familiar handwriting filled the page, and for a moment it felt as though her daughter was right there with her, whispering each word into her ear. Emma's letter was filled with love, gentle reminders to smile, to remember the moments they had shared, and to find joy in little things, even on the hardest days. Emma wrote about how much she loved their special spot under the old oak tree in the backyard. She described it as their secret place, where they would sit together and watch the sunset. Sarah's breath caught while Emma mentioned the tree, her words hinting at one last surprise. Emma's note ended with a message that felt like a warm hug. "I'm never far away, Mom. Just look under the tree and you'll find a piece of me there." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped out into the backyard, the cool breeze brushing against her face. The old oak tree stood tall and strong, its roots intertwined with memories. She knelt down in the fallen leaves, her fingers trembling as she cleared the earth beneath the tree. It wasn't long before her hand brushed against something solid, a small weathered wooden box. She carefully pulled it out and wiped away the dirt, her heart aching with anticipation. Lifting the lid, Sarah found a collection of treasures that Emma had gathered. Little drawings, a pressed flower from a day they'd spent together in the garden, and a locket with a tiny photograph of the two of them, their faces bright with laughter. Sarah kept the locket in her hands, her tears falling freely now. She clutched it to her chest, feeling a warmth spread through her that she hadn't felt in weeks. It was as if Emma's love was wrapping around her, comforting her in a way only a mother could understand. She sat there beneath the branches that had shaded so many of their conversations, feeling a sense of peace settle into her heart. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the backyard, Sarah whispered a thank you to the sky. She knew that somehow Emma had given her the strength to keep going. It wasn't about letting go of her daughter, but about carrying her love forward, knowing that in every sunset, every breeze, Emma would always be there, watching over her. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.